Welcome to the Carlson Cards podcast, where we interview longtime collectors to learn more about their strategy for growing an incredible collection. Today's episode is episode 12, and it's a big one because welcome to National Week. I am so excited for this show. It'll be my first time, and I love this episode because I had the chance to ask a great collector a ton of different questions. Our guest today, his name is Grant. He goes by @Waldorf_Stories on Instagram. I'm sure some of you are already familiar with him. What I liked most about this episode is that Grant dwells in the 90s basketball grails. These are the types of cards that you go to National Convention just crossing your fingers and doing everything you can to hope you stumble upon one. What was great about Grant in this interview is he was extremely candid and shared his perspective on what it's like to hunt for these cards when there's so much competition around you looking for the exact same cards. And the thing is, with a lot of these, if you don't find them first, they are gone in the snap of a finger. So hope you enjoy this episode, and let's kick it over to the conversation. Welcome everyone to episode 12 of the Carlson Cards podcast. We have today a very, very awesome collector that I'm sure many of you will know. And if you don't, you're going to know him very shortly. So we have on Grant Slayton. He goes by @Waldorf_Stories on Instagram. First of all, Grant, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. And so my wife told me, she said, if you have Grant on, you have to explain how you two met. So I'm going to tell you how we met, and you got to tell me if you remember this. So I went to the Madison Card Show. I set up for the first time, Madison, Wisconsin. My wife was helping me. I went to the bathroom. I came back. There's this cute little kid in front of our table just chatting her up. I'm like, who's this kid? Did you adopt a kid? Like, who is this? And she's like, oh, his name's Gregory. He's very friendly, nice kid. I'm like, okay. All of a sudden, his dad comes over later, and then it happens to be you. And it was really funny because you said, oh, I have some cards. And I looked at him like, these are some really sweet cards. Like, who's this random guy walking around with these cards at Madison? And then what's funny is I went home, I saw your Instagram story that you were at the show with your son. And I was like, wait, super weird. I follow him, but didn't know who he is. And then whatever. Do you remember that? I just remember that. It was really funny.
I remember it very well. And yeah, because I have a pretty good following, and I've been doing high end for a while, but I don't go into shows and tell everyone like, hey, because I don't care for that. I'm just there to look at cards. And when I posted him, because that was one of the first ones I took him to, and I saw your comment, I really loved it because I was like, oh, that's cool. They knew who I was, but we didn't when we were talking. And yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, it was funny. And like I said, I got to give Jenna credit. It's weird how many times she met Brett stacking slabs kind of before I did. It's just weird. She says hi first. It's like, you keep stealing the thunder, Jen. What's up with that?
Oh, well, you got yourself a winner.
There you go.
Such a sweet person. So
thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it, Grant. So I want to dive actually right in. So I mentioned I would ask you about this. I had listened to you on Stacking Slabs, and I'll give a shout out and a plug to that. If anyone listens to this episode and really likes it, Grant was on Stacking Slabs last year, I think, or was it earlier this year?
Yeah, I think it was 4 months ago or so.
Okay, so fairly recent. But I remember that episode was right after you had done a very, very big trade with a guy by the name of MK Sports Cards. I think his name's Michael. And I know you talked to Brett about that. It was the very beginnings of when you made the trade. If I recall, and you have to fill me in where I'm wrong, it was one very big Michael Jordan for about 300-400 cards. I wanted to ask in kind of a follow-up 4 months later, maybe if you could touch on that trade a little bit, and then especially touch on what you've learned from this experience, and maybe anything that could be helpful to listeners here, whether it's, experience selling some of them, grading some, anything, whatever you think of that would be helpful.
Yeah. There's so much that could be talked about just on that for the 4 months that's happened since. That started my year like with a bang, and 301 cards. All of them were like collector pieces, gold prisms or one of ones or very rare pieces. And I immediately started figuring out what to sell, what to trade, etc. And then I have traded into what you're showing here. All three of those have came from this Michael Jordan PMG. So you got the 98 game jersey out of 23. My favorite Jordan auto is the UD3 ticket. And that one came with the pack it was pulled in.
Wow.
These boys stopped at a card shop on the way home from school or something. They bought a pack. They pulled that card. And then I got that one of one buyback as well, because I was able to sell so many pieces. And then I'll buy this, or then I'll trade all these pieces from the trade, and I got the other two. So and I have a lot of other cards left from it. Like, yeah, the ones you're showing now, the Scottie Pippen PMG Championship, that was pulled in Burbank.
Oh, wow.
So, with money coming in, I scooped that up. And then the Sean Kemp I picked up 2 weeks ago. So, like, all these cards versus the Jordan PMG Championship. And I still have quite a bit of spending cash on me too. So it worked out. It's like my favorite deal I've made.
Yeah, how does I was gonna ask this, and obviously, huge props to both of you because again, these cards we're displaying, you're looking at like again, PMG Green, Sean Kemp, PMG Scottie Pippen. They're ones you've gotten out of this. And I guess I just have to say how crazy and number one, awesome that is that you two both pulled that off. I mean, that's gotta take a ton of trust. If did you guys know each other well beforehand, or you just kind of over the process here developed a relationship?
We knew each other very well from the moment he got back in. Um, we had very similar interests. So, and he's got good taste. So we were going after a lot of the same pieces, or I was finding him a lot of stuff. And then I don't know, about a year and change ago, I picked him up a Jordan Grail. He traded me a bunch of stuff. And then at one point I picked him up a Brett Favre PMG Green. He traded me a bunch of stuff. So we kind of had a built-in, like, we already were rolling like that, where we would do big trade downs. And it took hours of comp work, but the actual back and forth was relatively easy for such a big card. And I wanted the challenge. It was extremely rewarding, and it still is. I'll be doing this until, who know, this thing could go on for a long time. I got to learn a lot with hockey and baseball and 90s insert sets for baseball. And that's rubbed off on me because now I have like a very crazy Barry Bonds 90s PC. I have like a dozen cards of his that have sprung off of this trade. And so I love it. I learned a lot.
In terms of learnings too, I was gonna ask like specifically, um, could you touch on maybe a little bit like how to even, let's say, digest that many cards? Like you're taking in 400. How did
Mhm.
you decide what goes to grading, what gets sold right away? I mean, obviously the cards that maybe already graded are getting sold, but in a general sense, how did you go about that? Especially if
Well,
there's lessons that, maybe myself or others aren't going to be picking up 400 cards over a grand a piece, but maybe it's like 400 cards that are $10 a piece, right? What kind of logic did you learn through doing this?
My friend Chase and I, CRV Cards on Instagram, he we get everything in, and 80% I would say was raw. And then we went through each card one at a time. Is this worth grading? That's your first question. Yes or no? And I mean, there was no special sauce to it. It was just, okay, this has a great shot. This sells as a 7 at this, but at an 8, it sells for this. If the window was small, let's just sell it raw. But you know how that game works. If it had a chance at a 9 or anything, obviously we sent it in, and I did very well grading it. His cards were, I mean, all the, like, the Prism Golds, a lot of them came back 10s, and yeah, that was awesome.
I think it's awesome because he seems like he really prided himself on the good condition, and I followed him for a while. I love how his take on grading too. Like I don't think it seems like he doesn't care. He just loves the cards, which I think is super admirable. I wish I could say the same. I'm too stuck on the grade sometimes, but I think we're all like that to some extent a little bit.
I think at our core, we like the card on its own, but
Mhm.
we understand, like, well, the PSA slabs look really good. But yeah, you got to get it graded because it's one, protected better, and two, you never know when someone's going to come after one of your cards. So you're going to be better off on the financial side of it, knowing what it is. But I'm the same way. Like, I would like to have my cards raw, but most of them get graded.
PSA marketing scheme. They're too good at it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm the same way.
Oh,
It's so funny though. It's in our brains, but it's how we collect and we love it. It's awesome. So Grant, I was gonna steer here. So the direction I kind of want to run with this podcast, I mentioned to you a little bit. So last week it will be when this airs. I talked to a collector Jordan about prepping for the national. Obviously, we'll touch on that a bit. But what I wanted to do with this one was really hone in on and focus on the actual show and how to have a successful experience based on the way, you've kind of navigated over the prior years and that sort of thing. So I was wondering, first of all, if we could touch on kind of your first experience with the National, whenever that was. And what do you remember the most? What were some of the learning lessons, that sort of thing? Because this will be my first time, and I'm sure a lot of people listening.
So I went to my first national in 2001 as a teenager. I think I was 14. And so that doesn't really count. I had gotten back into cards and I ran out to a national. But my first one back, I got back in the hobby in 2012. I didn't go to the national till 2015 because I had started my first bar the year prior. So I got to the first national in 2015, and my cousin and I waited in line, 2 hours to get through the doors and all that. And I didn't know what to expect because I hadn't even been going to small shows at that point. I was just too busy at that time, but I expected that there's going to be a bunch of 90s cards everywhere. And especially back then, there wasn't. There was like literally one table in a pretty famous dealer who was set up that had 90s cards, and everything else was nothing. It's different now. Like, it's so different now. There's basketball is king, and there's 90s stuff everywhere. Yeah, my first experience, I mean, was probably the most life-changing because that's how I was able to acquire my biggest card. And I've told that story a few times on different podcasts. Yeah.
Grant, I was going to ask with that too. When you say there's one table of good 90s, some basketball, and then there's a lot of nothing. Back then, was it similar to now where you see all the really modern prospects to make up a lot of the table, then a bunch of vintage? Like, what do you mean by there wasn't a ton of basketball? What else was there?
There was so much vintage.
Okay.
It was incredible. How much? Because I don't really know a lot about vintage, and that's what was. It felt like 70% of the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's changed. That's definitely changed, right? Vintage is strong as ever, but there's not as many. The breakdown's way different now. So I went to like every table asking for 90s cards. I struck out like crazy, but I had an incredible show because I met one guy in the crowd.
That's what I was gonna say. What led to the success? Was it like a single interaction there? I think I remember this story now that you're saying it. Could you touch on it
Yeah.
for a second?
Yeah, just a quick overview of it. I was asking every table, do you have rare 90s basketball, specifically Kobe? Every table said the same thing, no. And this guy in the crowd, and it was crowded, he taps me on the shoulder and he says, I have rare 90s Kobe Bryant cards. And he pulled out the credentials Kobe from 97, numbered to 73. And we made a deal for it, which opened the door with him to more deals. He pulled out the Kobe Green PMG the first day I met him. When we finished the deal later that day, I ended up buying that from him 2 years later. 2 years later, and that was a catalyst in life for me, a big time thing that happened.
Yeah, definitely like a life-changing card. I can feel that just from talking to you too in general. So Grant, when it comes to that specific side of things, before I ask you for like, general tips for the show,
Yeah.
you mentioned again, making that one relationship that kind of led to a lot of different things. Any tips when it comes to that sort of thing, especially again, those of us walking who maybe don't know any dealers yet, maybe there's nobody we've ever seen before. Any tips kind of getting that relationship started?
Yeah, a lot of fortunate for me, a lot of it's natural, and I've been doing it for a while now. And try to have a real conversation. I guess you can have that conversation about anything you want before you start talking about the cards. Here, just actually, not just walking up and how much, and just trying to get a flow going with them of real conversation. It goes a long way when you're dealing and negotiating. For example, I last year at the National, I'm there early, and I am going table to table as fast as I can, as efficient as I can, to find what everyone who competes with me is looking for. And I see a table and I see a Ray Allen Credentials rookie. And this guy's table has hundreds and hundreds of cards. You can only see slivers of each card because they're stacked. I see a Ray Allen Credentials rookie. Then I see a Ray Allen Flair Legacy. And then I see a Ray Allen Platinum Medallion. So I don't jump into, hey, how much for the?
You're telling me that doesn't work, Grant? That's not a good strategy. It works on Instagram, it does not.
Right. I said to him, you have quite a few Ray Allens. You must have bought out a collector. And then we started talking about how he bought out the collector. how this guy had them stored away for all these years. Oh, that's super cool. I bought 2 of his Ray Allen cards, and I'll just say I made $5,000 by the end of the day. That paid for the Airbnb.
I was gonna ask, so like part of it that you said there too with the, you ask and he kind of tells you a little bit. I feel like part of that that's unsaid is that you get some context clues a little more on the cards then. Like, it sounds like you were able to successfully
Yes.
make some money on it. So I'd imagine is that partially like it
The
would
second
happen to be in really good condition, that sort of thing.
the condition wasn't pertinent on that deal. It was PMGs, and
Hmm.
but the moment he said, yeah, a guy came into the shop, dropped off all of his Ray Allens, you had a feel that he got a deal. I even though I knew it was a one of the better deals I'd get, you still negotiate because otherwise you can lose the deal by just trying to buy it as fast as you can. But yeah, you get a feel like that, and yeah, you can refine this and do better than what you're doing right now. That's
Hmm.
I still think about it every time I do a deal. Is like where could I have done something a little bit different?
No, that totally makes sense. I'm sure part of it too is that, like, I think you already touched on it. It's that relationship building and like, where can you, if you're like you said, sell online on Instagram, maybe there's another deal down the line. I'd imagine like that's part of coming into these conversations in your head as well, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you buy from these people like this consistently, they will remember you're that guy that just was pretty easy to work with, cash in and out.
Hmm.
Like I negotiate with people, sure, but it's not a long drawn out thing.
That's good. Awesome. Interesting. So when now we kind of tie in back to the show and the national and that sort of thing. I was wondering what kind of tips in general, if you have a few, anything that comes to mind besides again, like the super obvious ones. Like, there anything that you think has helped you be successful at these shows? Is there any like unsung tips that you think would be good to share with people who are listening to this?
Yeah, it's probably going to sound generic, or it's like clear. Try to be as clear headed as possible, focused, and people talk all the time about their national experience. How it's all about connecting with this person and talking and hanging out and stuff like that. I have an opposite approach when I'm on the floor. Yes, I'll have conversations with that I do a lot of business with during the year, but outside of that, I'm going from table to table to table, and just you have to cover as much ground as possible quickly because there's so many other people out there. Whatever you collect, that are also there. They're your competition that day. This is a once a year event, and it's a spectacular event. You need to be getting those deals. You need
I
to
like
come.
you're straightforward with it. I like that. It sounds like, and the way you've done it is, like you said, is strictly logic of I can only get to so many tables in this time. So if you're going to talk to somebody, I would assume you'd probably say it's good to catch up with people, but maybe some of that could be done after the show. Is that kind of part of this tip here? Like, you get the dinner with people, do that, but maybe at the show, just be
Yep.
friendly and say, hey, I'll catch up with you in a bit. I got to go run to these tables and check everything out.
Yes. Now, unless you're a billionaire who goes to the show to hobnob with people, I'm there to set up a very good year
Hmm.
that follows that. And every year at National, the new inventory is pretty wild. And like you were saying, afterwards, have your fun, all that. But I strongly recommend staying on point at the show and getting a lot done.
Grant, when it comes to you say getting stuff done, is there a specific day that you feel is really strong? Like, for those who are going, do you think, like, again, it sounds like these are bit like the heavily focused business day for you? Is that Wednesday? Is it third? I mean, I would imagine every day it sounds like, but is there any that come to mind that typically a successful day happens on maybe Wednesday and Sunday? Like, anything like that that comes to
Yeah,
mind?
the majority of people, Wednesday's your first day. You can go get there as soon as you can. That's my advice. If you're a dealer, Friday and Saturday is going to be your best day. That's the most traffic. That's the most cards being brought up to your booth. Friday and Saturday are awesome, but if you it's finding the cards that there's a lot of dealers that set up at National, and that's all they do all year. And they're in small areas of the country that maybe they run a shop or maybe someone knows them in town and they pick up inventory and they bring it out for one time of the year at National. You have to find them before I do.
I think people don't say this, but I feel like people are probably thinking it, if that makes sense. I
Y-
feel like most people don't
Yeah,
say it as direct as this, but it's what most people are probably thinking.
right. And I don't want your audience to think, oh, what a douche,
Yeah.
cutthroat thing. But this hobby of ours it can be so rewarding. that like it's time, it's go time. And I want to tell your audience that like that's real.
Yeah. And do you think part of this, so that maybe what I'm hearing too a little bit, and I think it ties into what you collect, right? Like some of these things, if you don't see it first, there it's gone immediately. And that's I would imagine for you as a collector, the only chance you are ever going to have at that card. And so that kind of tie in with what you're saying here. Like that's why there's such a priority on this and such a importance.
Big time. And more recently, I'm sure you've noticed the 90s cards are higher than they were in 2021. How many cards can you say that about? There's a few, that have consistently keep going up. So when I get to that show, I know guys that I know are going to be, it's more than that are going to be running around fast. I see them at all the shows, and they're good. They're good. They know what they're doing. Where I'll do the best at National, though, like honestly, is when I'm at my dealer booth. Every year, the trades at the booth are the biggest thing for me. But that first 2 days, I'll be there Tuesday. Actually, I'm getting in Monday, so I'll poke around for a second, but it's kind of just to relax and get situated. And then Tuesday, I'll go in there. But the general public can get in on Wednesday. So I just recommend getting in as early as possible. The National's so big, like I'll miss something, and then dealers are getting new inventory the whole time, right? You can still show up on Wednesday. It's not game over, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's still new inventory coming in, or they're still setting stuff up, or they weren't set up on Tuesday.
Question for you too, as a dealer, you say you set up and do quite a bit of trades. Do you, I guess I'll put it this way. If I'm somebody walking the show and I see your table or see someone else's table, how much do you feel it's important that you're trying to trade stuff that fits with what that dealer seems to be working with? Like, I guess what I'm getting at here is like, you clearly, I'd imagine your table is going to have a brand to it, right? You're going to have a lot of 90s, a lot of really rare stuff. So is your mindset kind of hoping that attracts that similar type of stuff? Like how much does that play into this equation?
A big time, big time. And then the guy next to me will have similar Grail 90s pieces and all that. And yes, it works because our hobby's so diverse with the types of things you can collect that if you brought a certain 90s card to a modern dealer who specializes in football, they're not going to be interested. And there's going to be a lot of guys like that there. And so, yeah, that absolutely plays a part to it, that it really, really works. We had so many crazy cards brought up to us last year in Atlantic City. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then Grant, so I was going to jump over to another topic I want to ask you about a little bit. Are there any deals besides that Kobe that really stand out to you? Whether maybe that's a little more recent that, for you are just awesome deals and cards you were able to pick up that are memorable that you want to share with anyone listening?
I would say Chicago 2 years ago, I made a pretty incredible deal there. I had a Michael Jordan 03 limited logos. That's out of 75 autograph patch, exquisite. And I traded that for the Michael Jordan PMG championship, the one from the MK trade. I traded for that and a Jambalaya Jordan PSA 9 from 97. Then what it turned into was just incredible. So I had another Jordan PMG championship the year prior. And when I got rid of it for the limited logos plus about $20K in trade. 9 months later at the National, I traded the limited logos for a nicer copy of the PMG championship, same card, and I got the PSA 9 Michael Jordan Jambalaya. So it was really cool. In 9 months, it was like a free Jordan Jambalaya card.
And it came full circle. That's interesting.
It came full circle. It was amazing.
So one question this kind of makes me think of, and I'm gonna ask you this, and you shoot it to me as straight as you want. What has allowed you to, would you say, to be successful? Let's say you came in again. It sounded like 2015. Was that right? Is that what you had said?
2012, but I really was cooking by 2015.
So I'll put this question this way. So a lot of people were probably around then. I see your page. I see some very good cards. I know from talking to you and getting to know you that it's not like you came from wealth. You're not a multimillionaire coming into this thing in 2012, right? So what has allowed you to get to this point? Do you just have a good taste in cards? Like, is that a simple answer to it? Like you just happen to like the cards that happen to really do well over time? It may be a silly question, but I just genuinely curious on that.
Well, there's a few similar guys in my situation, like MK Sports Cards and Spur Fanatec, John Burleson, where they came in a little after me, but they were interested in the same exact cards. I was just naturally drawn to them because I grew up collecting them. And then I was like, oh, wow, these are really hard to find. And I went to shows and I went to shows and no one had anything. Then I started getting good at finding them all over the world. The new guys coming in that were my age, that were making more money, professionals, doctors, lawyers, etc. They all were wanting the same stuff. And it was like, this is a real trend. So I got to see a trend before, while it was happening, before it really was here. It was nonstop. It was just, I just kept going at it. I was very aggressive. It was as much money as I could throw into it while running my bar.
So you'd say the success there, it sounds like, maybe this obviously still applies to this day. You kept an eye out and were looking at the sets that it seemed like people who were coming in were wanting because of nostalgia or because of they are similar to you and they remembered it from when they were kids or that sort of thing.
Right.
Is that kind of what you say allowed that to be successful? Then you just happen to keep an eye out for that and go with it?
For sure. You're earning, typical earning power in your 30s is like when you're really starting to move. And I just was able to see that was the audience, that was the buyers for a lot of this. And it just, everything worked. Any business or any pursuit in your life, a lot of the most successful people in the world will tell you focus, a relentless focus is needed. And fortunately I had it with this market, and it has gone pretty crazy.
So speaking of this market, I'm going to pull up your Mount Rushmore here, but speaking of your market, and you can share as much as you want with this, but I know from chatting with you, and again, I think you'll probably touch on it with some of these cards, you've made a lot of deals internationally. And the
Yep.
way I took it from chatting with you at shows is that that's the kind of make or break thing, is if you can find these places where cards are that, otherwise they're never going to see the light of day, but you happen to make a connection and kind of work an international deal out. How has that kind of fit into your collecting, these kind of international deals you've went on and picked up cards? Could you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, just back to the networking. You get through with one deal and you do it right, you're going to get hopefully they're going to think of you on the next one, or you start finding stuff that they need. Some of the biggest collectors on the planet are still, they do that, that have a lot of money. They're still buying stuff that other collectors need to unlock something else. Yeah, I love seeing these 4 images, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, funny. I asked the question as I was pulling this up. I should have had a drum roll and then pulled this up. So yeah, I have the Mount Rushmore here displayed, Grant. And for those on the podcast, they're not gonna have a visual. So if you could kind of step through this first card and really describe what everyone's looking at, that'd be great. So what do we got here? Obviously, beautiful card. I recognize this one, of course.
The 97 Metal Universe Precious Metal Gems Red Kobe Bryant. This one is special to me. It's number 11 of 100 on the back. The first 10 were green. So the 11th copy would be your first red printed. So I really, I've always loved that one.
Where did you get this one originally, Grant?
I got this from John Burleson, who I just mentioned.
Oh, really? Okay.
He found 2 of them. This, like, right after I bought my green Kobe. So he found 2 reds. And this one was pulled by a father and son in Australia.
Wow.
It was, and it was in 1998, and they had it until 2017. And John was able to get it from them. And I think John was buying a house, and he asked me if I wanted the Kobe's. I bought both of them for $16,000.
And when was this? How is this in 2018, 2019?
I think probably early 2018 or late 2017.
So right before these really got, like, I mean, they were popular, but before they really got crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, the Kobe ended up hitting a high of $240,000, and it's still a 6-figure card.
And how difficult are these? I mean, okay, I understand they don't pop up that much, right? If somebody's actively looking, could they go find one of these today? If that makes sense, right? I mean, I'm sure there's for the right price, you can get anything, right? I guess.
Well, we're in a weird area in this hobby timeline, right? Where if you asked me that question like 3 years ago, I'd say no. But today, with so many people with leveraged purchases and stuff like that, you might be able to pull that off, but you shouldn't be able to. And it won't always be. It won't always be like that. I think there's like an altered copy on on PWCC right now on their fixed market. But generally, the answer is no. And I guess my test on how rare a card is like how often you'd see it at a show or anything. And this card, it will be on display at National. It won't be for sale. It'll be like on display. That's about the only place you can see it. And it generally isn't available.
That's a beautiful card. It's one thing I want to know, and you mentioned an altered copy. Where do they fit in this whole scheme of things? Like, I'd imagine they go for significantly less. How do collectors view altered copies of this set?
With that card being so expensive, if you want to own one, you really do have to see them in person to understand how tremendous the design is. With this set in particular, people just want to get the card. I'll bring up MK Sports Cards, who has his altered Michael Jordan. He's thrilled to have had that card for the last 6 years. That's if you can't afford the graded copies, that's a great card. I actually have an altered Kobe red as well, and it just has a touch of red ink at the top. Someone colored it in. A lot of that set had so much chipping on the outside. Collectors back then, they were taking red markers to them to fill in the white.
I like the look of this better with a red marker on it. That's what they were doing.
I don't know what they were thinking, but it's happened on a lot of them. And so this Kobe I own is like, it's gorgeous. It wasn't trimmed or anything, but at the top edge, you can see some red ink. But I really like that card.
So it's not the ugly stepchild is what you're saying.
It's not. It's beautiful.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So Grant, and this second card I know ties to the National, so I'd love to hear about this card here. If you could just describe it again, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so we are looking at the 1997 Ultra Michael Jordan Platinum Medallion Masterpiece 1 of 1. Now, this is undisputed Michael Jordan's first 1 of 1 card ever made by a card company. It could be on anyone's Mount Rushmore. I'm very proud of this one. It took 3.5 years of emailing and talking with this gentleman who owned it. No one had seen this card all the years. I hadn't. I remember when I'd open boxes of Ultra, I'd be like, hey, no one's ever seen the Jordan 101. You know, that thought would cross my mind. But this guy showed up in 2018 on a blowout forum and he posted it. And it was like it was the coolest thing ever to see that. He also had the Grant Hill Credentials 1 of 1 from that iconic set. He had both of them, and all of us collectors had no idea where they were all these years. And this guy owned both of them. But it took 3.5 years, and it was such a nice man that sold this to me. Chatted here and there, and I was just real respectful because it is such an important card. And one day he said, I want it to go to you. Oh my God. It cost a fortune. And I met one of his employees in Chicago at Morton Steakhouse, duffel bag. It was a pretty cool deal. And then I got it graded at the National last year. I had told Nat Turner that this would be a good card for you guys to grade to start your National, and they made it their first card graded at the 2022 National. So it was really cool. They charged me $10,000 to grade that card. 10 grand. I was stunned, but yeah.
Hey, you paid for their booth though.
Oh man,
that's funny.
I'm not doing that this year. Year.
So I was going to ask in terms of like, me seeing this for the first time, not being like overtly familiar with the set, where does this tie into Jordan's hierarchy of cards? Without obviously you'd probably be a little biased because you own it, but like genuinely, where does this tie in with a top 10 Jordan cards of all time? Where would you say this slides in at?
So I wasn't prepared for this, but I think I can do it off memory. And for me, at least, it'd be the green PMG, followed by the Credentials 97 out of 9 copies. And then he has a PMG 1 of 1. I think there's a strong case for that being number 4. I'm trying to remember right.
That's really cool. That's insane.
Yeah. Kobe Bryant's my favorite player, but Michael Jordan's my favorite player to collect because when I was a kid, his cards, and they always have been, the best. But yeah, back to your question. Jordan here for your listeners, Jordan, his last season was 97-98 season, and he has 6 masterpieces created. Ultra comes out first, and this is the first. This is the base card. There's a subset card at the end of the series from series 2 called 98 Greats. And there's a masterpiece copy of that card that has never been seen. In that final season of his, 97, 98, there's Flair Showcase that comes out. They have row 0, 1, 2, and 3. They each have a masterpiece. Okay, so there's 6 masterpiece one-of-ones created in Jordan's last season. It's the first time the card companies ever did one-of-ones. So the Flair masterpiece one-of-ones, Nat Turner owns 3 of the 4.
What?
Yeah. Nat owns 3 of the 4. He doesn't know where the 4th one is. So there's, like I said, 6 masterpieces, 3 with Nat, 2 unknowns, and then the first one, which I own. So this, we probably should have saved it for last, but this is my best card.
No, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing too. Like I said, always obviously an admirer of Jordan, but this ultra high end, it's just something I mean, I don't even know where you go to find this information. That's another question where, like, let's say someone is interested in these ultra high end, like even just finding the set checklist. How do you come to find out that there's 6 one-of-ones? Like, is that just from deep diving or conversations with
Well,
others?
and I've been all of it. Conversations with others.
Mhm.
There's a lot of very knowledgeable guys that are quiet on Instagram. But I have every Beckett made from the eras that I collect. So I can go look at that.
Wow.
Not only is that fun to do and cheap entertainment, it's really educational. I have spoke about it on other podcasts. Like, if you're into a certain era of cards, go spend the $40 on a couple years of Beckett's to see what was being said about the products when they came out. That's just a no-brainer.
That's really cool. It reminds me, I used to be, well, like, okay, maybe 5, 6 years ago into video games, and they always had the Nintendo Power magazines, and people would always go back and collect those. It's probably similar for cards, it sounds like exact same. You just go back and
Oh,
you see the
man.
hype with the sets and everything.
Oh, dude, I love those. I love those gamer magazines,
Yeah.
tutorial, everything. It is so much fun to look through old Beckett's. If you're into this hobby, I really recommend doing it.
All right, everyone listening, now you got to go buy a few online or wherever you might find them.
Right? Yeah, eBay, easy.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. So Grant, a number 3 card here. What do we got?
So this one's pretty special. This was like the first, well, no, the card is the 97, 98 EX 2001 Credentials Future Michael Jordan, and that is numbered to 72 copies. It's the pink, red, purple. It's just a gorgeous acetate card. You don't see anything that nice being made since. 97 was the best year for sports cards ever, and I would dispute that. I'd take that one all the way. That's my hill to die on. 97 is the greatest year of cards ever. And they put out this incredible Credentials design. And this Jordan, I really wanted it. I set it as my grail in 2018 to accomplish. But I had put, usually grade never mattered for me with the cards. This one, I was like, I want a 9, and I want it to have been graded earlier. You know how you can look up the serial
Yep.
number on Beckett. And I found this one that had been graded in 2012, and it's a 9 that's actually a half point from 9.5.
Wow.
And God, I just love this card.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the card design, everything like that. One thing I want to ask about there, you mentioned the earlier grading. Is that due to like authenticity type of thing, or you just like the history of the fact that it was graded a long time ago?
I just like, because I've cheat cuts have came out of that card, but I'm not worried about the legitimacy as far as I just wanted something that was graded a while ago. I like seeing that stuff. And 2012, there was a boom in 90s cards. They were forgotten about for a minute, and then they came on strong in 2012, and that's when this card was graded. It makes sense,
Kind of ties to that history. That's pretty neat. I have a question for you. This is a observation here. What a freaking shame it would have been if Michael Jordan retired in 1996. We would lose all of these cards we're talking about. I couldn't even believe
right?
it.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And then, well, equally, so 1998, 99 rolls around. He's retired, but the card companies have already, done their work to have him included. If you look at certain sets from 98, 99, and here I'll give you a good example, is the EX Century. So like the Credentials I'm talking about, there's no Michael Jordan base card. A Michael Jordan EX Century Duncan Go Nuts So they made a deal somehow. They made a deal with him or whoever it was. Yeah, we've already made the designs and images. They let them use certain amounts, and that's why he's in some of the 98, 99 sets, but others he's not. Like Flair showcase. He's not in any of the base cards, but he has the takeit2.net insert.
I guess it didn't occur to me that he was in 98 sets, but now that you're saying it makes sense. It sounds like because they already had the designs made, they made a deal with him anyway.
Yep, that they could do certain amounts. And like he's in the base set for like the PMG, thank God. I own one of those. That's the only PMG I have of Jordan right now is the 98.
Okay.
The gold version. I call it the gold version, but yeah, I'm sure you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yep. There's the
Uh,
football looks. I've seen a lot of the football set. Those look really nice.
oh yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful. But yeah, so Jordan cards from 98. He's in some, but he could have been in there could have been a few more grails of his floating around, especially like the credentials. That would have been really cool.
Interesting. Awesome. So then Grant, I mean, it's crazy. We're on card 4 and all of these are insane. So what do we got here? What's this 4th card here?
So when I got back in, like really, really going in 2015, this was my grail. This is the 97, 98 Metal Championship Precious Metal Gem Kobe Bryant. This came out months after the red PMG, that set. Kobe's grabbing a rebound. In the background is the Pacific Ocean, and it's a gorgeous, like sunset looking pink and purple and orange, and it's just I think aesthetically it's his best looking card.
And these are out of 50 then, these PMGs. Just want to make
Yep.
sure this year.
Yep. And what I love about a lot of the 97 releases, particularly the 2 PMGs on the screen here,
Mm-hmm.
they're photos from his rookie season. You can see the gold
Oh.
you can see the golden 90, the 50th anniversary patch on the cards. So this was rookie year photos, really cool. Like I said, that first national I went to, and I met Corey, who showed me, hey, I have a lot of high end Kobe 90s. He showed up to my bar 2 months later with that card. 2 months later, yeah.
And then you made a trade, or what happened? Bought
He
it from him?
he called me. He goes, and I hope your audience understands this. Like money was not like it wasn't like a open piggy bank or anything like
Yeah.
that. It was hard, and he messaged me, or excuse me, he called me. He said, I'm coming through your area. I think he said tomorrow. And he said, I'll bring the PMG if you want it. I think he said $3,000.
And so you're scrounging to get that as fast as you can.
I paused for a second. I was like, yup, bring it. I'm gonna figure this out. We're doing this. That card is just unreal. I want to get more of them. They're a lot of money now.
Do you take duplicates when you can? I mean, obviously you would on any of these, but is that something you actively are targeting as duplicates for a lot of these copies if you could?
Austin, I love getting duplicates of high-end cards. I have always done it. I always do well with it. It's something magical about having a duplicate of a rare card. And I'm not talking just a valuable card. I'm talking a really scarce, desired card. You do really, really well with them.
I suppose the nice part is it's easier to let go of one copy if you have another one that you can hang your hat on at the end of the day, right?
Oh God, yes, absolutely.
So a question I have for you then, and I mentioned this one I think to you ahead of time. I was gonna ask you about what's the goal of a Waldorf Stories collection 10 to 20 years from now? I'd imagine you still want to be doing this. What's the goal here? Are there is it I want to have X, Y, and Z cards? Is it who knows? We're gonna see what happens. You said focus, so maybe does it tie into focus?
Well, cards are so it's so crazy, what will come at you at any point. Right now I'm on a total dry spell going into the national. Like I can't find stuff to buy. And then there's waves that'll hit you of some of the greatest pieces you ever wanted to acquire, and can you pull it off? So to answer your question on the card front, it's really hard to lay out a goal like that. It's really, I guess a goal card for me would be the Jordan credentials numbered out of 9. That would be a good goal card in the 10 to 20 year range. But my goals outside of that in the business world is if you do cards seriously and you are good at it and you're acquiring and your assets are going up with cards, like to turn that into real estate property. And I have a lot of goals on that front for the next 10 to 20 years. And, it's just cool. It's fun. I have a child. I want a lot for him. So yeah.
Mr. Gregory's gonna have a nice empire of cards here coming up. No, just kidding.
He doesn't like cards much at all, and I'm
Uh,
totally fine with that. I think, like, if he wants to do it, but he has fun at the shows, and
mhm.
he's like, so we'll see. But either way,
I saw you had gotten him that. I think you sent a picture of like a Sonic the Hedgehog card. I was like, that's badass. Like that's just super cool. If I was a kid, I would have loved
oh,
that.
that was so cool, and I bought it during the market boom for like $200.
Yeah.
And I actually looked it up recently, and it had sold for like 150, so I didn't do too bad.
Ooh, big investment for him. That's good.
Austin, didn't you send us some Kobe Bryant cards?
Yeah, well, I think oh yeah, because I saved some the last time the one time I saw you guys, and then the next time I saw you, I happened to have them in my case still, so I didn't give because I
See
make
what
yeah, I give
you
them to Gregory. He loved them, I think.
he did, and I have them upstairs. I know exactly where they are. What a
Cool.
nice gesture. You're a very kind guy, man.
Thank
So
you. I'll give you the
you're
$10
appreciated.
afterwards for saying that. I'll give you the money after this. I bribed you to say that. No, kidding. Thanks, Grant. I appreciate it. So that was
Yeah.
awesome. That was your Mount Rushmore. I really appreciate it, like learning so much because I get a lot of people on here, but I haven't had someone like you who's so direct in the sense of like you're navigating this high end market. It's kind of a different scheme of what I've kind of dealt in. So it's very interesting to learn from you. So I'm gonna end here if you don't mind with a fast five. So I always do this with everybody. I just give five quick questions. It's whatever the first answer that comes to you. Hopefully, maybe a tricky one here. What's the best burger place in Lake Delton, Wisconsin?
The Brat House. The
Okay,
Brat House Grill, best burger. That's my spot.
awesome,
Our food is so good. You guys, if you're ever in the area, feel free to DM me.
awesome. Thanks, appreciate it. Got to give the shout out when we can, right?
I love it.
And then second question. So if you could play on one of the Kobe or Jordan three-peat teams, like I'm talking like you're there for all three seasons, which pairing is it? Like which trio of seasons is it? And you're
If
like a role player. You're not like a sharp, maybe like a Steve Kerr type player.
even though I love Kobe more, I'm taking the Jordan, the second three-peat. That was the world was watching. That was really, I'm crazy about the Last Dance documentary.
Mhm.
I would definitely take the second Jordan three-peat for sure. I was so little when I was like 9 or 10 when that was going on, and it was everything.
You
Like
have
you're
memories of like those games live? Did you watch them live?
Yeah, I have some memories of it. We'd be at my uncle's house, or he had a resort. I remember, like I remember watching Reggie Miller. I remember rooting against Michael Jordan for a bit of it because he was winning so much. Yeah, that was a special time. And for your audience, like if you can buy rare Jordan cards, I don't know the last time I lost on Jordan on when I've put picked up a significant card of his. So I'll tell that to everyone every time is Michael Jordan always.
One thing that I always wonder, and I wonder if there's too much of this too, like I've seen this with certain players even in football. I always feel like people look at Jordan as like, oh, Tom Brady, not to pick on Tom Brady, but it's like, oh, he's the Jordan of football. And the more and more I've thought about this and heard this, I just feel like it's an impossible comparison. Like Jordan is Jordan. I don't know. I don't think you could. Do you feel that too? Like when people say like, oh, Kobe is this, Jordan's that. Like, can you even compare to Jordan? Is that even a thing?
No, I think Kobe did the best job. Well, a lot of people don't talk about is like Kobe gets Pau Gasol, just
Mhm.
gets Pau Gasol, and then they run to three championships and win two of them. And his supporting cast is, Ron Artest and Derek Fisher types, and they go compete against the first or the super team out in Boston, win one out of two. Kobe was right there, and I don't think people give him enough credit because he missed a few more shots. Kobe was so much fun to watch.
Awesome. So this one you already answered. So I'm going to ask you for your second option. If you could only collect 1 year of cards, and obviously I think you would have said 97. What's your second opinion there? What if you could only stick in 1 year of cards and collect for the rest of your life? What year would that be?
So you're saying besides 97, since
Yeah,
I already
besides
confessed my
97.
love for it?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
And are you saying across all major sports?
Correct. Yep.
It'd probably be 1998, and 2003 is right there with it.
Okay. I
So
like that.
yeah, probably there. Because 98, there's a lot of fun in football and base. Yeah, probably 98.
Awesome. That's a good one. I think that's a unique one. I haven't heard that. I've heard 2003, 2012. There's a couple like that. 97 is a common answer. That's good. Fourth question here is what What is the biggest regret you have in terms of a card you've let go? Maybe not even value wise, but just like, oh man, I would love to have that one back because I love the card. Is there any that come to mind?
Dude, I thought you might ask this question. So I thought about it today, and I don't get a lot of regret with moving cards. I sold my Kobe PMG Green last year. That was a lot. That was extremely significant. But the one card that came to mind was my Penny Hardaway 1997 Credentials. Now it was numbered to 4 copies,
Wow.
and it's PSA 9. I traded that to Nat Turner for a Kobe Bryant PMG Red BGS 8, and I still regret that trade. That Penny Hardaway was so cool. Just to give you an idea of how hard the 97 Credentials set is, you know how for your audience, like every player was numbered differently.
Did
And
it incremented by 1 for every player in the set or something like that? The
correct.
Grant Hill was number 1, and then
Yep. So Grant Hill was number 1. So his that version of his Credentials is out of 1, and then there's a Kevin Garnett out of 2, an Iverson out of 3, Penny Hardaway out of 4, Rodman out of 5. I could keep going. I'm pretty good. And I've owned the Penny Hardaway out of 4. I've owned the Stephon Marbury out of 13, and I've owned the Sharif out of 14. And then a few, I think the 15, 16, 17. But in the 10s, less than 10, I've only owned 1. And that was the Penny Hardaway.
And those are, I've got to imagine, those are absolutely locked away.
No one has those cards. They're locked away. Spinatron has the whole run. I believe he completed the set.
That's insane. I've seen a photo of that. It's ridiculous, like completely ridiculous.
Yeah, the guy should get some type of medal for that. I mean,
participation trophy at least.
It's truly, if you think of what had to have happened for him to do that, it's like kudos to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no one has those cards. They're just amazing. So that'd be my one big regret. Nat Turner got me.
5th and final question here. So, in terms of your son, we talked about him a little bit. You said he maybe not into cards a ton. Is there anything, if he did get into cards, that you'd really enjoy collecting with him, maybe besides Kobe and Jordan? Like, is there anything that comes to mind that you think could have fun collecting over time together?
Oh God, yeah. I love that stuff. He's into Sonic the Hedgehog. I have a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog stuff at this house. He's into Roblox. After this is over, I'm hopping on Roblox to play a game with him.
Oh, heck yeah.
If he was into anything with the cards, we're probably going to have one of the better collections very quickly. So I would love that.
I'll be keeping an eye out. Maybe in like 2030, we'll be hearing from Gregory. He'll be knocking on some podcast doors or something.
Well, it's funny. All of his friends like Pokemon.
Yeah.
But he's not into it. And if he was, we would have some pretty cool things for him to bring to school, and but that's all good.
Yeah, goes that way sometimes. Awesome. So Grant, number one, just want to thank you for hopping on. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. A lot of fun. I learned a lot. Again, not a topic or market of cards that I'm uber knowledgeable about. I'm sure most listeners probably could use a little bit of knowledge here. So I just appreciate you sharing. And then where can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out, if they have any questions or anything like that, or if they have cool cards to sell, maybe?
Yep. Always easiest is Instagram at Waldorf Stories. That's where I'm doing most of my business. So I see most of the message requests, stuff like that. So that you definitely get a hold of me there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Grant. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for listening.